Hi guys, Dan here, hope you are doing well. In today's very short video we will paint Daiyokai for my Japanese army for the Infinity, and as well in this tutorial I will show you how to paint these swords super nicely and a very easy way to paint the white on the model. So without further ado, let's get started. Started with priming the model with the Wraithbone. I used my airbrush and just sprayed a couple of very thin coats until I get the even coat all around the model. And then my first contrast paint will be a Blak Templar. I will apply this straight from the pot, and I will paint all the dark parts of this model. So his gloves, his under armor, and his feet and head, actually his face. This will be how I did it, so you can pause here if you wanna do the completely same scheme. If you made some mistakes like I did, you can go back to the model with the Wraithbone and just go around and fix it. Two very thin coats will totally cover the black underneath. Our second contrast paint for today will be Apothecary White. So I will go around all the white armor panels and just wash them with this paint. So you can use this paint straight from the pot, and just try to be neat and try to avoid going on the parts that we already covered with the black. Because this color is slightly gray or bluish, so if you go over the black parts they will be really bright and they will look gray. While our white armor panels are drying, we will paint the red ones now. We will use Mephiston Red. I will put this paint on my wet palette and add a few drops of water to it, so it flows much better. And then I will cover all the panels that I want to be red. This will be done in two very thin coats. So wait for the first coat to completely dry and then go with the second pass, so you will have a nice coverage. So this is how the model look at this stage. So from now on I need to wash the red parts. So I will use dark tone. If you don't have a dark tone, you can use the Noon Oil. If you don't have a Noon Oil, you can use the Druki Violet. So just apply one very good solid wash over it. Try to be neat and not to go on any other parts of the model. One of the details that I like to do now, because if we do it later it will be a really messy, it will be a big problem, is all these little lightings that he have on his armor panels. So I will use light sea blue, and then I will just fill up all these little sockets with the blue color. If you go a little on the top of the armor, it's fine, because when we start working on the white armor panels we will cover all of the mistakes we did here. Just try to be as neat as possible, because you don't want to do a lot of repair works later. This is for your reference if you wanna pause here and just paint it same as I did, so you don't miss any of those. we will start highlighting the model now. So first thing I will do, I will highlight the black parts. I will use Administratum Grey, and I will apply it as an edge highlight. On his feet you don't need to be that much detailed, because later we will use the pigments on top of it to create some dirt and mud. But if you don't use pigments, then try to highlight every single sharp edge on his feet. And for the under armor, you can just slightly, very lightly dry brush it. Now it's time for the biggest part of this model, and that's his white armor. So I will use Ulthuan Grey, and I will put this color on my wet palette and add water to it so it flows better. And then I will start covering like 95% of the previous color on the armor, but I will try to avoid of paint going into the recesses. I will leave all the shadows intact. The only problem here is that this color is very transparent, so you will have to do this in 3 or maybe even 4 very thin coats to have a nice coverage. To be honest, I think this session of painting the white armor took me around 2, maybe a little more than 2 hours. I was making a breaks and coming back after it's dried to do another pass. So just be patient and go around and try to have a nice coverage. You can see here the difference on his arms between the few coats of the paint already. And this is after multiple coats when I was happy with the level of the color of the white. And for the final highlight we will use a white scar, and we will apply this as an edge highlight. So every single sharp edge of the model needs to be highlighted with this. I don't know how is it visible on the camera, because I don't think it's showing it right, but in the real life you will see a difference in the few shades between the highlight and the rest of the armor. So try to be very thorough with this and highlight every single sharp edge. Now it's time to start highlighting the red parts of the armor. So we will use the same principle and the same methods as we did with white. So I will first start with the Evil Sun Scarlet, and I will apply this in a multiple thin coats until I get an even coat all around. Just try to avoid the darkest recesses and leave all the shadows intact at this moment. And my only highlight on this will be Troll Slayer Orange. So this will be done as an edge highlight. So take a little paint on your brush and use the edge of your brush and just make like a 45 or 90 degree angle against the model and just pull your brush until you get even lines. And for the blue parts I will use a sky blue as my edge highlight as well. And at this part of the video I dropped my model on the ground, so the sword in his left hand will be slightly bended until the end of this video, so I apologize in advance. Now I have to paint these two symbols on the back of his armor on the back. I will use the Wraithbone as my base color and just apply this in two very thin coats just to cover all the red, and try to have an even coverage so you don't see any red going through it. And then after everything is dry, I will use Ulthuan Grey and just paint it with two very thin coats. If you want, you can use White Scar to highlight it, but I don't think it's necessary at this moment. It's time to start working on the swords. So I will put on my wet palette dark Prussian blue, light sea blue and the sky blue, and I will mix two of them with a 50-50% mix, so I have a selection of 5 tones on my palette. First I will start with the dark Prussian blue, and I applied it in the opposite corners of the sword. And while the paint is still wet, I will go back and take some light sea blue, and then I will apply it next to it. But the thing is, I will start applying my color on the top of the previous color and pull it towards the brighter part of the sword. You can see it how I did it here. And then I will use pure light sea blue and paint the remaining part of the sword, and then for the final step I will use a mix of the light sea blue and the sky blue and fill out the gap in the middle. And then from this moment you will have to go back and repeat the previous steps multiple times and try to blend these colors together. It is up to you how many steps of this you wanna do, but actually the more of these repetitions you do, the sword will look better. I just did a couple of it because I don't wanna waste too much time, and I will draw a little lightings and a little light reflections on it, so you won't see the rough transitions that much. And for the highlight we will use Ulthuan Grey, so I will apply this as edge highlight on every single sharp edge of this sword. So you have one on the top of the sword, one at the middle and the cutting edge at the bottom. And then after I'm done, I will just draw these very thin diagonal lines all around the sword. So just to make some random patterns and draw very thin lines. Now we will do the same with the red sword. So we will use Screamer Pink, Evil Sunz Scarlet and Fulgrim Pink, and we will make a totally same mix as we did with the blue. And I will use the same method as before. So I will use first Screamer Pink, and then I will apply it in the opposite sides of the sword, just as my darkest color. Then I will use a mix of a Screamer Pink and Mephiston Scarlet, and I will start painting it, but I will start from the Screamer Pink and then pull the colors more towards the middle of the sword. Then I will use Mephiston Scarlet, and then I will paint the rest of the middle part of the sword. And my third shade will be mix of the Mephiston Scarlet and the Fulgrim Pink, and I will apply it as my brightest highlight at the middle of the sword. And after few repetitions, this is how it looks like at the end. So now only thing that's left is to highlight it. I will use a Fulgrim Pink as my edge highlight, and just do the same as with the blue part, highlight all the edges and draw very thin lines in some random patterns. Now it's time to do the random markings on his armor, so I will just copy the art from the box and draw these red lines on his chest armor. I will use Mephiston Scarlet and my smallest brush, and first I will sketch these lines and then I will just make them thicker after. And then I will use a Trossler orange and apply it as a little highlight. Now this part is completely optional. I will use some brown iron oxide. This is actually Vallejo pigments, and they are like very dusty, so I will use one of my old brushes and just take a little of these pigments on my brush and just try to smudge it all over his lower part of the legs. So just go around like a couple of times and apply this. Because it's really dusty, it will be a really mess, so try to not make too much mess on your table. And go around a couple of times and you will get a nice effect of dust on the dirt getting on the white armor. And that will bring us to the end of this video. If you guys are interested how I did his base, I will include the link in the description of this video. I hope you enjoyed this quick tutorial how to paint the white and the power swords. If you did, please guys subscribe to the channel and leave a like, it will mean a lot to me. And if you have any suggestions, please feel free to make a comment below. That's it for now. Stay safe, take care, and see you in the next video. Bye bye!